Lady here. I hope you all are doing well.
The principle, if you will, of enjoying your aquarium is a function of setting it up so that it is as trouble-free and as labor-free as is possible. And that's really all I've been trying to teach through all these videos, is how to set up an aquarium that's trouble-free, that's labor-free, that's easy to maintain, that you can walk away from for an extended period of time, and it will remain stable and healthy. So I guess that's really, if you're having trouble, that's what you need to figure out, is that it really is possible. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups. It really is possible to set up an aquarium that is honestly trouble-free. I was watching a video recently, a pretty long one, by a good aquarist who is trying to help people do problem solving.
Hello, Mary. Mary, try and sort this one out. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that can be. Let's talk about fish. Fish. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Instrumental break. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. 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 Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Fish.
Well, mercy. I almost did a video today. Didn't get to it quite. Thought maybe I'd get into it this evening and maybe then clip it and post it as a video. It's interesting because it's a more in-depth study of what it is that makes a living aquarium. The title, working title I've had is your aquarium dead or is it alive? And the conversation goes into what it is that actually makes it alive. It's based on some new research that's been done in the plant farming industry, having to do with regenerative farming, which I refer to as regenerative aquatics, meaning a system that continues to thrive and continues to regenerate itself. Now, we really don't think of our aquariums that way, but there's no reason not to. Our aquariums are perfectly capable of doing everything a garden is able to do. And that means to regenerate itself. Well, we'll see if we get into this a little bit. Let's do a few hellos. Punchy Paints is here. Hey Punchy, nice to see you. Silver Creek Aquatics, Craig Donover, Craig's Catfish Cave. Depth Charge, hello Depth Charge. Fanaticals, Chicken of the Sea. Who else is here? The Scouse Scaper, nice to see you. Mighty Mike is here. Sketty Nona, enjoyed the birthday live stream. That was fun, wasn't it? We got 21 watching. We got 14. We need a few more likes and dislikes. We hadn't had a dislike for a long time. A very long time. Who is that just came in? Crusader 34. You're welcome, Crusader. Tuger. Hello, Tuger. Marty 80. Tigress 5606. Punchy gets dislikes with every stream. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I think it's your artistic bent, Punchy. You know, what makes artists unique is their vigorous, rigorous independence. Their ability to focus like a laser. And certainly anyone with the skills you have has mastered that ability. Yes, you are a sweet old lady. You are. Cougar, I'm going to dislike, just keep you humble. That's fine. Fanatical ability to make rubbish look interesting. Well, I don't know. It depends on what you view as rubbish and what you view as art. If you're not familiar with Punchy's art, and I would guess from that comment you're not. Mug, where's my mug? There's nothing rubbish about her art. Not at all. I have had several friends who have been on the same level of artistic skill as Punchy Paints, and they're people who supported themselves as fine artists, primarily by selling prints. One was an artist who specialized in Chesapeake Bay hunting themes, dogs, ducks, that sort of thing. Louis Frasino was his name. He's since passed on. I was fortunate enough to be able to buy a large collection of his originals many, many years ago. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to keep control of them, and they were effectively abused and lost. But he was a remarkable man. He was deaf, couldn't hear or speak. He would spend 1 month on a painting. I probably could pull up some of his work, just remarkable. John Wood, is that his name? I think so. John Wood was another such artist too. He actually worked in a market his entire adult life selling cookies. Never really tried to sell any of his paintings, but um, again, an absolutely remarkable artist. I don't have any of their works, either of them. Sad. I did buy one at Punchy's though that I'm looking forward to getting. What else? Ms. Pam is here. 3G. Hello, 3G. Barb's for T-Bone. Thank you for that. Let's see. Mighty Mike, big difference in the garden analogy is we have less need to tend to the soil and substrate and live in the garden state without a garden. No, I don't think that's the case. There are some differences, but the differences are really relatively minor. In order to maintain a regenerative garden, it means adding certain kinds of material to the soil. Humic material is chief among them, but also bacteria. And of course, there's the basics. There's magnesium and iron and calcium, the basic elements, nitrogen, and then allowing that material to chelate. We're more keenly aware, I think, in the aquarium of the chelation process because it causes bubbling. It also causes root burn if the roots are planted too deeply. It's part of the reason we do a sand cap, is to separate out those early chemical processes from the living environment. That's not something we are nearly as aware of in a garden. The other reason is in a garden, bacteria gets first dibs on everything. In an aquarium, it's the chemicals themselves that get first dibs on each other. That they become the initial activity. And until they get themselves resolved, chelated, kind of smoothed out and calmed down, until all of the chemical reactions of these various elements reaches the point of less and less and less reactivity, to the point where and the term is chelates, to the point where it chelates, then those elements become available to the bacteria, which are able to take them up and by assimilating them, are able to release them as soluble elements by plants and plant roots, as well as by microfauna. And the critical component for all of this really is the microfauna. Now, the elements themselves are taken up. There are a couple of processes that go on. Separating out the elements by the bacteria is one, and they do this by using it to build their body structure. But there's another, and that's the creation of lipids, of fats. And fats cannot be broken down by bacteria. You may be aware that fat is used before refrigeration. Fat was used as a means of preserving meat because bacteria cannot assimilate fat. It can't break it down. What can break it down and what does break it down are funguses. Funguses consume the fats continuously over and over and over and over until they finally are resolved into humic material. And it's that humic material then that becomes the foundation, the basic food source for microfauna and for plants and animals. So in order for all of that to occur, there needs to be an environment in which it can occur. And that environment is one that we've learned how to duplicate or how to create in an aquarium, and it's not quite the same as in a garden for a couple of reasons. The primary one of which is standing water. In a garden, you don't have standing water unless it's a pond garden. You have water percolating, but you don't have the soil sitting in water as a permanent condition. Whereas in an aquarium, you very much do. You have the soil sitting in water. And so in order to be able to maintain that soil in the water column without substantially disrupting the water column, we employ a 2-inch bed of sand. And it has that salutary effect of keeping the soils, the humic material, separate from the water column, that is the free water sitting on top of the sand. Without that, a couple of things happen. Number one, the materials in the soil become dissolved in the water and are used up. They percolate into the water and they're used up by plants, typically by algae, but also by microfauna, very quickly, and in a way that leads to the entire environment becoming increasingly deprived of nutrition. It's one of the difficulties that was discovered in the early soil tanks. They lasted about a year, and then the nutrients in the soil were simply used up. They were burned up. They were taken out of the soil. They became part of the water column and were used up by algae and other plants and microfauna. So we needed to find a way to prevent that from happening. And more to the point, needed to find a way to allow the kind of chemical and biological processes that occur in soil to also occur in an aquarium. And sand, simply enough, became the solution to the problem. I remember a conversation I had with a follower of Bill Barr several years ago. Golly, probably 3 years ago. I was speaking at the Tampa Club about this issue. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, "This doesn't work. It cannot work." There's EJ.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
It's okay. How
Can you
are
hear me
you?
okay?
Yeah, just fine.
Is there there's an echo, isn't there?
I don't hear one, but then I never do.
Ah. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Sorry, again. Hold on, let me see what. Oh, okay, we're good.
I'm just talking about conversation I had with a follower of Bill Barr.
Oh,
You
Bill Barr.
Yeah, who said that the 2 inches of sand that I put on top of the soil prevents any kind of precipitation from occurring. He said it's so slow as to be meaningless. And my argument was, yeah, it's slow, but that doesn't make it meaningless. It simply means that it takes a longer period of time for the particulate matter to precipitate into the soil. It may take upwards of a year, but in so doing, that soil then is being replenished in a time frame that makes it possible for it to be able to be regenerative. And that's the problem with the Wallstead method. The Wallstead method did not figure out how to regenerate the soil. And it's really quite simple. It's simply a matter of a deep enough sand bed on top of the soil to prevent the soil from leaching into the water column and to slow the precipitates sufficient to allow them to break down in the process of getting down into the soil.
Circle of life, but where do fungus come or fungi come into play with that?
Fungi break down lipids. Lipids are fats.
Okay.
They're created by bacteria. But the bacteria can't break them down. In fact, the only thing that really breaks down lipids is fungus. Now, it doesn't do it by consuming it and changing it into something else. It does it by eating it and eating it and eating it. It eats it again and again and again.
Yeah, continuously breaking it down further and further each time.
To the point where what is finally left is humic material. And it's the humic material then that forms the foundation of the food web.
Yes.
Which is the ability to make minerals mobile. They're able to get into the plant roots. And
right.
also makes that material available to microfauna as food, as nutrients.
Yeah, okay.
What is that? Speaking of detritus, if you get mold built up to half an inch or so, is it best to add sand? Yes, that's the key. That's absolutely right, Christy. If you get a mold buildup on top of your sand, that means simply that the sand is not deep enough. So add another half inch of sand.
Well,
And
what
that,
if I got mulch buildup, but not because the sand was deep enough. It was just over time.
precisely, the sand is not deep enough to handle the bio load
Uh-huh.
that's being created in the tank.
Okay.
So the solution is to add another half inch of sand.
Okay.
That allows that mulch then to precipitate into the sand bed, all of it. Now,
Okay.
it's not critical by any means. I mean, having mulch sitting around on the surface of the sand doesn't really create a problem, particularly if you're adding humic material, if you're adding leaf mulch,
Yeah, kind of
because
blends with it.
it does. The leaf mulch gets broken down, and the best way to do this, if you're putting, you need to always start with wild living mulch. It's absolutely critical because it's the only way to get the full load of biological material in the tank. And without that, it can take literally years for that to build up naturally. Here's the reason that
Oh.
I've been over this before. If you take raw leaves, dried
Yeah.
leaves that have fallen on the ground, in the fall you rake them all up, you dry them out, you scrunch them up and put them in the tank. Well, what you've done now is you've created a humic material.
Right, but it's sterile.
But, well, it's not completely sterile, but it really has very little biological activity in it.
Mm-hmm.
Very little in the way of fungus, bacteria, or microfauna. By gathering that material from a body of water that's been sitting there for a few years, you stand a much higher chance of being able to get the full retinue of life that thrives in that specific environment, in
What if
that
it's
humic environment.
just a muck bucket that's been sitting on your balcony for a couple of months?
Well, it depends how it starts. If you're starting with material from the wild, then you're really home free because you brought into that muck bucket all of the material that is living in your natural environment. If you start it with dry leaves, it's going to take a long, long, long time.
Yeah,
Here's
actually, I've seen that. I've tried both ways.
right. Here's why. In a fully developed, fully mature biological environment, such as you would find in a stream bed or a pond, there are over 1,000 species of bacteria. Now, how long do you suppose it'll take for that bucket sitting on your back porch to be introduced to 1,000 species of bacteria? It may hit the first 100 in the first month or so.
Uh-huh.
It'll be another couple of months before the second 100. It's literally years. Fungus. There are 400 species of fungus naturally living in a wild humic environment.
Well, I've
Four-
seen where they've taken uh, samples from different bodies of water depending on how old the body of water is, actually, whether it's like a pond or actually it was aquariums, some different, like how, depending on how long the aquarium had been set up. And there's definitely more living things squirming around in the older aquarium water than the newer aquarium water.
Sure.
But I'm just trying to think, because I have a really good biological system going on in my tanks, and I
Yes,
didn't
you do.
really, and it happened before it started even taking stuff in from outside into the wild, and a lot of it started with just simply a muck bucket, but that it wasn't even stuff that it wasn't even stuff that I gathered from the wild on purpose. I'll keep in mind, I mean, I hadn't really met you. I every piece of information on the internet told me that I should not ever do anything from the wild because it's dangerous and blah blah blah. Hear me out on this. So this is the information I have. At the same time, I'm finding really interesting. Like I've got this muck bucket that's only exposed to the air on my balcony, and I just throw excess plant stuff and old aquarium water in there, and I just kind of like just let it be. But and then I started seeing some of the biological activity, and then frankly, some of the cool stuff that I started feeding to the fish in the aquariums that I had. And so, but it's like I never put anything under a microscope, but it was just very balanced. It
Right.
just really
Now,
was.
so what happened was you brought that culture to the point where once you did introduce material from the wild, it literally exploded. It climaxed. It became all that it could be.
Well, another thing too is that so it was really a lot that had to do with plant gathering. I was gathering plants from everywhere,
Including from the wild.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then the excess would go into the muck bucket.
So you were introducing material from the wild.
Yeah, nobody told me not to do that.
Yeah, that's the key. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Now here's what happens. The plant needs to be able to assimilate basic chemicals, basic materials, in order to do photosynthesis. It needs to be able to take up iron, magnesium, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, and a few other just basic elements.
Yes.
It cannot do that if they're in the wrong form. And the way they get in the right form in our systems is through this process of chelation.
What's chelation?
Chelation is two things. It's occurring in the dirt, all of the elements that we make, the supplements that we mix in with the dirt, the Epsom salts that has magnesium in it.
Oh yeah.
The iron oxide. All of those materials are not in a form that plants can take up. And so they begin reacting to each other. That's what causes the bubbles to bubble up in the early tank. It's chemical activities.
Oh, I just thought it was trapped air.
No. It's actually chemical. It's chemical activity that's producing those gases, and the gas is primarily nitrogen. Now, nitrate or nitrogen is one of the basic elements that plants need in order to be able to do photosynthesis.
Well, it is like 79% of the air we breathe.
Right. But they need more than that. They need the magnesium and the iron and the calcium to be in a form that they can take up. Now, how does that occur? That's the role of the bacteria.
Okay.
the bacteria assimilate that material, they eat it, they convert it to their own bodies, and as they expire, they release these chemicals back into the substrate, back into the soil in a form that plants can assimilate.
Okay.
So we need bacteria. Bacteria are absolutely critical. Now, when we say we need bacteria, the scourge of most hobbyists is bacteria. They're scared to death of it. And why is that? Because they have dead tanks.
Oh, I was just thinking because we live in a society where antibiotics are are prescribed like, like it's candy. Not that there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying that we've gone throughout history, we've gone from a society that thought there was something wrong with washing yourself. If you recall, I know that historically in the medieval times, they felt that if you bathe, it was like, like the devil's, you're going to get possessed by the devil or something. And time of the Civil War era, where a doctor absolutely ended up in the asylum in the latter half of his life because nobody believed him not to that you can't, after touching a dead body, not wash your hands, and then maybe the patient won't die. So we went from that kind of culture all the way to a completely sterile culture, which we're still in.
Yeah, and it's not it's not that it's sterile so much as it is toxic. So we put toxic material in our tanks in order to maintain a condition that we think is sterile. And it's really not sterile at all. It's actually dead.
Okay.
We're creating dead material that has the ability to, or has the effect of building up monoculture bacteria. And it's the monoculture bacteria that then attacks whatever is living in that environment, namely the fish.
Yeah, they're living.
So by treating our fish tanks with with chemicals that
like no planaria,
that have the effect of poisoning biological material, that creates a rich environment for bacterial monoculture, certain specific kinds of material that thrive on dead matter to explode in the tank and to attack everything. So the big box store that sells a bag of gravel and some chemicals to a new hobbyist is sending them into a situation where they are moving into a death spiral. They're creating a death spiral. They're creating dead zones in which only dead material can be created. Nothing can live in that. Bacteria is not a living animal. Bacteria is something between life and not life.
Oh,
it's not really. It's not an animal.
Okay, it's not an animal. It's like something between a plant and an animal.
No, it's not like a plant at all. It's something between a living animal and a non-living animal. It exists in a world of its own.
It's so bizarre. It's hard to explain.
Oh, it is bizarre.
It's hard to explain. it's hard for my mind to categorize that.
Well, there's no way. We don't really have a way to characterize it. It's called bacteria. That's how we characterize it. But it can thrive in environments that nothing alive can thrive in. Hot mineral springs, you get huge growths of bacteria. Bacteria mountains grow in it.
Oh yeah.
They're not alive. Nothing alive can survive in that environment.
They've
But it
taken
produces.
samples. They've taken
Here's the
samples
thing.
from the Mariana Trench, by the way. They've
Yeah,
taken
exactly.
samples.
From the vents. It
Yeah.
produces material that microfauna are able to thrive on.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking about that a little while ago. It produces material that plants are able to thrive on.
I
It
took
produces.
I took a couple of boiled cucumber slices and I stuck them in my blackworm culture, and it's like the inside gets eaten first by the blackworms. They're literally eating the softest part, not the they're not eating the plant. They're not eating the actual boiled cucumber. They're eating the parts where the bacteria breaks it down first.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's the nature of the process that goes on in our fish tank. When we put a layer of leaves on top of the sand, that humic material, that gets broken down. There are choppers that break it down into smaller pieces, and then there are bacteria and fungus that attack it and break it down even more. And then there's microfauna and plants. A microfauna, microflora, higher order of plants are able to take up that material once it's broken down by the bacteria. What is this? Helps and fool people in creating unstable environments. Yep, that's it. It's exactly right, fanatical. Exactly right.
Hey, I saw that Brentwood is going through something rough. I missed. I guess I missed the first part of it. What's going on with her, guys? Or him?
What are you talking about?
Brentwood apparently has some family problem, like some wizard. I don't know. Hey, Brentwood, you okay? New comments. It was at the very beginning when I hopped on around 30 minutes ago. So I hadn't had a chance to greet everybody, and
well, here it is.
Yeah.
Will not be around tonight, maybe tomorrow, dealing with the sudden death of my spouse. Have a good stream. I'll try to get the replay. But God bless you, Corinne. My word. That's so sad.
Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry.
Praying for you, Corinne. We'll keep you in our prayers and in our thoughts.
I was at a big box store today picking up some food for the Queen.
This being the Queen.
It's her bedtime. She's like, why am I on the light?
Goodness sakes, Corinne, whatever we can do for you, please.
Yeah.
Reach out.
I'm so sorry.
Let's see, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did that. Was the mold build-up question?
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, I was late, guys. I have a full-blown teenager now, and I'm trying to. I'm fighting for her every day. It feels like.
Oh, Craig is getting a new. They're getting a new pet store in town.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
Oh, I was looking at female bettas today.
All right.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what would be the perfect female or couple of females to breed with my half moon my half moon blue and like American. It's such an American fish. My red, white, and blue half moon. And I mean, I saw a vein tail female. I saw a crown tail female. It was at the big box store, so it's not like they had anything too incredibly special. But they
Crown
did have.
tail is nice. A crown tail is a good mix with a half moon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that they can kind of create a half moon, sort of like a feathery thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That can work out real well.
Oh, fanaticals. We have. I don't know if it's too soon. I think we're still technically in mourning for the former Queen of England, but she has volunteered to take her spot, but because I'm not too sure about the new King Charles these days. So vote for her. I don't think you can do that too soon.
Yeah, she doesn't have the proper credentials, I'm sure.
I think she's got fantastic lineage, if I do say so myself. Okay, so I could breed a crown tail female with my rose tail or half moon beta, and that could produce something very interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I may now. What color though?
Oh, that's completely up to you. Probably you'd be better off. I don't know. You might want to mix colors. There's always the possibility of getting a koi by mixing colors.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen. Doesn't even usually happen.
Yeah.
But when it does, it's spectacular. That means you get 3 or more different colors on the same fish.
Oh, I see a koi all the time, but they're usually on like the short fin bettas.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
To have them on like on a crown tail, for example, or for a half moon, that's not exactly common.
Yeah, I have had that.
You have.
Isabella.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I totally lost track of where
we were talking about bacteria and how it wasn't really quite living and it really wasn't really quite dead. It was a sort of like an in-between category that's very difficult to describe. And then we had a couple of questions in the chat, and I don't know if we answered all of them, but Craig did mention he wants to know, I think he was just thinking out loud about if there's bacteria have a nervous system, et cetera, but there was Chick of the Sea was wondering about the additives in the substrate creating the air. Is it some kind of fermentation, which I think you did talk about? It is kind of like fermenting, bacteria is used to create wine.
Right.
And beer.
It's 2 things. Initially, it's chemical reactions.
Yeah.
And then it's bacterial conversion, where the bacteria assimilates the material and breaks it out by component, so that when the bacteria goes back into the soil, it does so by separating out all of these elements and making them accessible to the roots of plants.
Okay.
Without that process, here's the thing: without that process, plants cannot grow. Now you can do a false kind of growth by introducing liquid fertilizer
Hmm.
and CO2 into your tank.
Yeah.
What that does is it creates a spurt of growth that has no foundation. In other words,
Oh,
the
the
plant,
roots aren't deep.
the plants are not made stronger by it. They're in effect made weaker,
Hmm.
such
Um,
that when you reach a point where one or another thing fails,
hmm.
where the fertilizers are not introduced at the same level, or the CO2
Hmm.
begins to fail, then those plants are going to crash.
That
Very
makes sense.
quick.
That makes sense because in my early 20s, what I used to be before I had kids, before I had a family, um, late teens, early 20s, because you graduated high school earlier in Canada. Um, I would I joined there would be these camps of people in Canada that they would go when they would replant trees that had been basically logging companies had gone through, and we were part of the group that would come in and replant or try to reforest what had been cut down. And then there's different, and that's where I learned about differences between in terms of the thickness of the tree. The faster the tree grows, the less dense it is. And the less dense it is means it can basically be destroyed easier by the wind and the elements. For example, a
Right,
pine tree grows quickly, faster than an oak tree, but the oak tree will withstand more hurricanes than a pine tree.
right.
Mhm.
And with plants, it's the same thing. They grow very quickly, but they don't grow strongly. They don't have the physical structure
Uh-huh.
that a more slow growing plant that's building its frame solidly
Hmm.
has. And it's the framing, it's that early framing of the early plant that determines its ability to be strong and to fruit. If it doesn't have solid framing at the
Hmm.
beginning, it will never fruit, and it will eventually wilt. It'll just kind of
Hmm.
fail because it doesn't have any real integrity. And you get that by synthetic devices. They're intended to do specific kinds of things that don't pay attention to the total needs. Here's the thing, I mentioned photosynthesis earlier.
Uh-huh.
If all of the elements are not available during the process of photosynthesis, then that plant may only be able to photosynthesize at 10 or 15 or 20%, not at 100%.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And that happens because it may not be able to assimilate the magnesium or the iron or some of the other elements it needs in order to be able to, to do full photosynthesis. So a plant that is able to do that is able to take up everything that it needs, will produce at it'll send initially 50% of its sugars into framing
Uh-huh.
and 75% into roots and into the soil. It actually, through a process um, that's called reduxination. Redux is
Redox or
the word.
reduxination.
The reduxination is when the plant overproduces sugars and
Yeah.
releases the excess into the soil. That becomes a bank that the plant later on, when it is fruiting, is able to draw back out and put into the fruit. It also creates a richer biological environment in the soil by virtue of the microfauna and the fungus that are feeding on all of those sugars.
Okay.
So in a matter of a day, that can shift when the plant reaches a point where it's fully framed and begins, if it's corn, for example, begins to tassel. At that point, it's shooting more sugars very quickly into that fruiting process and causing the kernels of corn to grow very rapidly. In a matter of days, they can swell up to.
Is that also why sometimes plants, when they recognize that they're not doing so well or they're dying, they immediately try to, a lot of the aquarium plants like try to, I guess, produce.
Yeah, they try to flower, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I think so. It's a matter of using what's left to try to perpetuate itself, or at least perpetuate its progeny, at least seed.
Right, exactly. Okay. Sorry, it's been a day, so. What's the chat talking about? 900. Wow. Oh, they're talking about RO water. Let's get Corey Miller's question out of the way. Do the leaves get stuck on the bottom from pressure?
What?
Kind of going back to the mulch, leaf litter.
Do they get stuck on the bottom from pressure?
Yeah. The deeper you go or the denser you go. I think probably the more appropriate thing is, why do eventually, like things like hardscape, like logs, which are, a denser version of leaf litter or mulch, eventually they sink, right? So
But they're heavier.
Yeah, they're heavier.
I don't understand the issue.
Me neither. Maybe Corey can elaborate a little bit later. Then, what's your opinion about OR water? It sounds. I know that Fanaticals and Craig are discussing different brands of OR systems. I don't really. I don't like it. I don't like OR water.
If you have extremely hard water, and you have a high level of evaporation.
Yeah.
If you've got those two conditions, very hard water and high evaporation, what you don't want to do is keep adding hard water to that.
Oh, that explains salt water too.
Yeah. Now, what you can do is, it'd be the same as if you replaced evaporated salt water with more salt water. Because the salt doesn't evaporate, just the H2O.
Yeah.
So by doing that, you're increasing the salinity, and you can very quickly increase it to the point where nothing much will survive.
That makes sense, because I'm no longer putting salt in. I have this container outside that has a bunch of brine shrimp that keep reproducing, and I don't feed it. I don't really do anything to it. They just sort of like live in the sun, or half the time in the sun. I'm not putting any more salt water in there. I'm just putting fresh water, fresh green water, non-salt green water, and they're fine. Because the salinity is already there, and I'm just replenishing.
Christy, I'm not aware of what you're talking about. I'll look into that.
Biogenetic decalcification.
We're talking about bicarbonate.
Oh, bicarbonates get carbon.
I don't know where the bicarbs would come from, though.
Calcium deposits on the leaf.
If you have low CO2,
Yeah.
Where
He's,
the
he's talking about acidic or humic environments, I think. High, acidic. I'm sorry. Is there a? There's an echo, isn't there?
a low CO2 environment.
Yeah, like acid, like
Well,
acidic waters.
it's impossible to have a low CO2 environment in a deep substrate because that's one of the primary things that substrate creates is CO2. Where the bicarbs would come from, though, I don't understand.
Bicarbonates. So basically, there's a chemical process that would break down complex carbon molecule structures into singular or specifically single out the carbon.
Yeah, I don't know about that. The RO thing.
I can't think of any examples though.
Yeah, we'll get back to the RO. A better solution is rainwater because rainwater has no dissolved solids to speak of. Now, it may be slightly acidic, but if your problem is high mineral content, that slightly acidic water is not going to be a problem. In fact, it probably would be a benefit.
I know that I have. Oh, there is a slight echo. Dang it. I know that I have. Even though I have hard water, my plants take up a lot of the. They eat up a lot of the minerals. Hold on, I need to put this thing to bed. Here. When I say the thing, I mean the queen. Sorry.
Yeah, geotank mates. You want to add water from your tap with very little chlorine. Yeah, the chlorine dissipates very quickly. It's one of the reasons I like to have a sponge filter or even an air stem in a tank. It's because it moves the water and gets it in contact with the surface where gases can gas off, like chlorine. The plants will also break down the chloramine, the ammonia. They'll pull the ammonia out of that molecule and release the chlorine. So, yeah, you don't need to do much if you've got a lot of plants in a brand new tank to be able to get rid of the chlorine and the ammonia rather quickly.
Crystal's giving a follow-up question. In my dirty deep substrate, guys, I'm so sorry. I know there's an echo.
I doubt that it's too much light.
Bell Scenario loves light. In fact, they will die without a decent
Decalcification. Biogenic decalcification. You don't mean decalcification. You mean calcification.
Yeah, like a buildup, right?
Well, I think that's what she was talking about before. All right, let me see if I can figure out what you're talking about.
All right. Corey was elaborating. I'm a little worried that if I put leaves in the bottom of my tank, the high current will toss them around instead of them staying at the bottom. How high of a current are we talking here?
Yeah, I don't know what you got for current, but leaves are going to settle to the bottom. And they'll precipitate. As they break down, it'll precipitate down below the leaves into the sand.
You have to be pretty waterlogged if it's a high current. Like, think about a river system.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean, there's still leaves in a fast-flowing river, although a lot of it,
Yeah, what's your current? What's causing high current, Corey?
I might have to go and come back. I really don't like echoes.
We're about done here. We're over an hour.
I know, and I'm sorry. I have full disclosure. Like I told you, I have a teenager, and I can't have her lying, even if it's because she's, scared to tell the truth. And so, it's a big deal if I catch her in a lie, and I have to kind of nip it in the bud right away. And not in a, you're a terrible person for lying. I just need to get to the bottom of why. In this case, it's because she was scared. Well, why is she scared? Why is she afraid to tell the truth? How can we, help you become a little braver or overcome that? But it's at an age where, as you become an adult, lying is a big deal. It can make or break your entire future, even if it's just little fibs. This is coming from a person who's a former who used to work in sales, by the way. I don't like, I'm very sensitive to people who can't tell the truth, and that includes myself. So I have to kind of get back to family and go through this with her.
So Corey's got a 100-gallon back filter and the high flow bubble wall. Yeah, the bubble wall could be a problem. That's interesting.
What if you kind of weight it down a little bit?
You do not need that back filter with the bubble wall. You might consider cutting back on one or the other, and I expect you really want the bubble wall. So you might consider cutting back on the filter, a 100-gallon back filter. It's probably way too much current in the tank.
Well, I mean, there's two things. Either the fish that Corey has loves it, or it's or aesthetic purposes, but we still want to bring a more natural system. So my suggestion to Corey is to study up on what river systems do, because river systems do have mulch and they have leaves, and usually if there's a high current, they kind of get in between or under a lot of the, I guess, it's kind of like rainwater clogs up a drain in the city streets.
Right. All right, guys, nice to be with you. We'll be here tomorrow night at 6 o'clock with Mary Page.
Yay!
Thank you, EJ, so much for coming on and being part of this madness.
It's wonderful.
Fun hanging out with you all.
It's a nice little reprieve. Now I have to go back and deal with teenage madness.
Fight the good fight again. All right. Well, God bless you all. Nice to be here. Great to be with you. See you tomorrow night. Bye for now.